The sharp bang of the courtroom doors echoed down the long hallway like a gunshot. It was one of those sounds that causes everyone to stop talking, everyone to look up, everyone to hold their breath for one silent second. And in that frozen moment, as dust particles shimmered in the light streaming through high windows, Kody Brown stood stiff as a statue, his hand still on the metal door handle, his eyes wide, his heartbeat pounding so loud he could almost hear it. This wasn't the safe world of TLC cameras anymore. Not the warm, carefully lit living room where producers could cut out the ugly moments. Not the staged conversations where they could take a break, fix their hair, redo the lines. No. This was real. Raw, unscripted, unedited. This was the point Kody had dreaded most. With each step, the floor beneath his boots felt heavier, as if it knew that he walked upon it with the weight of years of resentment, regrets, and secrets. The courtroom smelled faintly of old books, polished wood, and that cold metallic scent that only government buildings have. Every eye was turned towards him. He straightened up, chin up, jaw clamped, shoulders square, trying to recover the old, confident swagger he had used to carry so comfortably around on television. There was no bravado, no charisma, and no excuses today. Only consequences. He strolled to his seat, every step serving as a reminder of how much had changed. Only a few years prior, he was the proud patriarch of a large family. 4 wives, 18 children, a fame built on ideals of unity and trust. The key to everything, the decision-maker, the man in control. He had been it. But today, he felt like the only man in the world without any control at all. He sat down, folding his hands tightly and trying not to show how nervously his fingers tapped. The room was too quiet, too tight. The walls felt like they were closing in on him, squeezing out the truth he had tried so long to mask with frustration, ego, and long emotional speeches. The double doors opened again. And this time, the sound was even heavier. Christine was the first to enter. She wasn't the smiling, cheerful wife the world remembered. Her footsteps were steady, confident, almost cold. She didn't look at Kody, not even for a second. She walked right past him and took her seat with a calmness that sent a chill down his spine. Her eyes were tired but strong, stronger than he'd ever seen them. Then came Janelle. Her expression wasn't angry. No, it wasn't. That would have been easy for Kody to handle. It was her disappointment that hurt more. She didn't look at him as if he were an enemy, but rather as a woman who had trusted him far too long, and now found out her trust had been misplaced. Her mere presence seemed to carry quiet dignity, silent strength that made Kody shift uncomfortably in his chair. Next was Meri. She hesitated for a split second at the doorway, as if taking in the scene. She had been the first wife, the one who supported him through the years when they had nothing, and the one he let go without a fight. She was older, not in age, but in emotion, like a person who has weathered storms no one else can understand. She didn't glare at Kody. She didn't smile either. She simply walked by him with that kind of silence that screamed louder than any argument. But then, the moment that tightened Kody's chest. Robyn appeared. Her steps were lighter, slower, as if she so much wished that she did not have to be here at all. Her eyes were filled with a mix of sadness and guilt and confusion. She looked to Kody, just briefly, but it had been enough. Enough to see in her eyes the fear, enough to see the regret, enough to make him feel something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. She sat down beside the other wives, instead of a little chair that was open right next to Kody. That little move felt like a gut punch to him. For the first time, he saw the truth clearly. The family he thought he controlled, the women he thought would always be around him, were now standing together, on the same side, against him. The air thickened in the courtroom. The judge entered. Stern, serious, completely uninterested in the fame behind the faces sitting before him. He did not look at Kody like a celebrity or a man with a TV legacy. He looked at him the same way he looked at everyone else who stood in that room with a broken family behind them. As the judge adjusted his glasses, rummaging through the stack of documents in front of him, the room fell in complete silence. Papers filled with statements, complaints, missed responsibilities, emotional testimonies. But Kody wasn't looking at the judge. He watched his wives and noticed how different everything was. Christine sat tall with her hands neatly folded. She was ready to say her truth, to defend herself, and to expose everything she had silently endured for years. Janelle leaned back, her eyes forward, as though she had rehearsed this moment in her mind many times. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't uncertain. She was prepared. Meri looked down at her hands, twisting the ring she no longer wore but still kept out of habit, a symbol of a past she had once believed would last forever. And Robyn. She kept her gaze low, bit into her lip, her fingers trembling. She knew what was coming, even if she didn't want to admit it. Kody swallowed hard. The judge cleared his throat. This hearing is now in session. The words were simple, routine, yet they hit Kody like a tidal wave. This wasn't a family conversation anymore. This wasn't something they could discuss behind closed doors. This wasn't something producers could edit into a softer scene. This was the day he must stand and face it all. He then continued. We shall first review the statements provided by each party. Kody felt his heartbeat quicken. Statements. Their statements. The truths he had avoided. The stories that would paint him not as the patriarch, but as the problem. A drop of sweat rolled down his spine. The judge looked up. Mrs. Kody Brown, you may begin. Kody's fists were clenched. He knew Christine had been waiting for this very moment for years. He knew she had words stored like bullets in a chamber. And he knew that once she spoke, there would be no going back. Slowly, Christine rose, graceful, controlled, powerful in her silence. She walked to the stand with steady steps, the sound of each one echoing across the room like a count. Kody looked away, not meeting her gaze. Behind them, the audience reporters, family friends, and just plain curious strangers held its collective breath. Cameras were not allowed, but smartphones were surreptitiously hidden, notes were being taken, and the back row was filled with stage whispers. Everyone wanted to see the day the Brown family legacy cracked open, like a dropped glass. Christine placed her hand on the oath, her voice firm as she promised to tell the truth. And in that moment, in that cold, echoing courtroom, even before she uttered one word, Kody knew something that was more frightening than anything else. The courtroom felt colder when Christine stood up. Even before she began speaking, the energy changed. Something in her posture, something in the way she lifted her chin, something in her steady breathing, all of it signaled that she wasn't here to attack or to get revenge. She had come to tell the story that the cameras never showed. Christine walked to the stand with slow, deliberate footsteps. Each step felt like the opening of a locked door in Kody's memory. Doors he had blocked, ignored, or pretended never existed. Reaching the witness stand, she placed her hand on the wooden rail and took an unusually long breath. The entire courtroom leaned forward in wait. She started off with a calm voice. "Your Honor, for years people saw our family smiling. They saw us cooking together, sitting on couches, laughing on the porch, pretending everything was perfect." She paused. Her eyes briefly met Kody's, but she didn't hold the glance. "What they didn't see," she said quietly, "was the loneliness." These words hit Kody like a punch to the chest. Loneliness? He opened his mouth as if he wanted to object, to defend himself, but he shut it again. Even he knew that interrupting her would make him look worse. Christine's voice was steadier now, stronger with every sentence. They had not seen the nights I stayed awake, waiting for him. They had not seen me setting dinner for 5, then 4, then 3, because he chose to be somewhere else. They had not seen how often I was checking my phone, hoping he would at least text to say that he was okay. A soft murmur ran across the courtroom audience. Even people who watched the show hadn't seen this side. Not like this. Christine folded her hands, her eyes glistening, but not breaking. "And the worst part," she said, "wasn't that he didn't come home? The worst part was that he came home angry, or tired, or already drained because he had spent his energy somewhere else, with someone else." Robyn ducked her head. Janelle looked away. Meri blinked slowly, willing herself not to cry. Kody clenched his jaw. Christine continued. "There were days I begged him to talk to me, to listen, to see me. But he didn't want conversations. He wanted obedience. He wanted applause. He wanted to be the hero for the cameras and the judge at home." Her voice didn't rise. She wasn't yelling. Yet with each word, it cut deeper because of how controlled she stayed. "What people saw on TV was edited," she said firmly. "Edited to make him look tired, stressed, overwhelmed, but behind the cameras, behind the scenes, he was angry. He was dismissive. He would roll his eyes, wave his hand at me, and walk away while I was in mid-sentence." Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his reaction being watched silently by the courtroom. Christine took a deep breath and moved on. And then there was favoritism. Now the tension grew thicker. "We all felt it, Your Honor. Every wife, every child. We didn't want to say it out loud because we wanted this family to work. But Kody wasn't equal, not even close." Her eyes drifted over to Robyn, not accusatorially, but with a sort of sad acceptance. "When he married Robyn, everything changed. The late-night talks, the special attention, the extra trips, the expensive gifts. He wasn't subtle. He didn't hide it. And we, his other wives, became background characters in the story of his new marriage." Robyn put her hand over her mouth as tears began to well up. Christine wasn't finished. "I remember one Christmas," she whispered, her voice quivering for the first time. "He bought all the kids gifts. But when I opened the storage closet, I saw boxes stacked up for one home, one wife, one set of kids, expensive things, beautiful things." She blinked. "And then I looked at what my children got. Used toys, discount items, things that broke within a week." A gasp erupted from someone in the back of the courtroom. Christine raised her head, holding onto her strength. "I don't care about money, Your Honor," she says. "I care about fairness. I care about love. I care about effort. But Kody stopped giving those things long before I left." The judge nodded slowly, taking notes. Christine's voice softened, but the pain behind it sharpened. "I begged him to work on our marriage. I begged him to go to counseling. Every session, he'd get angry, blame me, walk out, or turn it into a lecture about how hard his life was. I felt like I was raising kids alone, while still pretending I had a husband. She took another deep breath. One night I asked him if he still loved me. A pause. A long one. He didn't answer. Kody looked down. He remembered that night. He just stood there, silent, looking at me like I was asking a stupid question. That was the night I knew our marriage was gone. The courtroom remained silent for several seconds. Some had silently sobbed. Even the judge's eyes softened. Christine reached into a folder and lifted a stack of printed papers, text messages. "These," she said, "are messages Kody sent me over the last 3 years. Messages where he blamed me for every problem. Messages where he accused me of being dramatic, lazy, manipulative, selfish. Messages where he said I ruined the family. Messages where he told me he didn't trust me anymore." She put the pile onto the judge's desk. The judge picked it up and began to read. Kody felt his stomach twist. He knew what was in those messages, the things he said in anger, things he never thought would see daylight. Christine's voice was quiet again. "I didn't bring these to embarrass him. I brought them because I spent years taking the blame for everything that went wrong. But I wasn't the only one responsible. And I won't let him continue with this story that I left for no reason. I left because he gave me nothing to stay for anymore." She fixed her eyes on the judge. That is the truth the cameras never showed. With that, Christine stepped down from the stand. She didn't glance at Kody as she passed him. She didn't need to. Her truth was loud enough. The judge beckoned the next witness forward. "Mrs. Janelle Brown, please step forward." Janelle stood up, calm, collected. But the quiet fire in her eyes warned Kody that Christine's testimony was only the beginning. He swallowed hard. The moment Christine stepped down from the stand, the air in the courtroom was heavier, thicker, as if oxygen itself was an effort to move. Kody shifted in his seat, his palms damp, his throat painfully tight. He had known Christine would come prepared, but not like that. Not with years of carefully stored truth, spoken with such devastating calm. He barely had time to gather his thoughts before the judge called the next name. "Mrs. Janelle Brown, please approach the stand." Janelle stood up slowly, smoothing her hands over her coat. There was no bitterness in her expression, no rage twisting her face. If anything, she looked tired. Tired in a way only a woman who has carried an emotional load for too many years could look. Kody's stomach tightened. Christine's testimony had been emotional, but Janelle's. He knew hers would be logical, precise, factual. Sometimes facts hurt more than pain. She walked to the stand, posture straight, step steady, eyes clear. She wasn't here to destroy him. She was here to tell the truth without shaking. With the oath now over, she folded her hands and began in a hushed, even tone. "Your Honor, I would like to start by saying I don't hate Kody. I don't wish him harm. I spent almost 30 years working with him, raising children with him, building dreams with him." Kody breathed a silent sigh of relief. But somewhere along the line, I realized I was in a marriage by myself. The relief died instantly. Janelle continued. "Kody and I were always different. I was practical. He was dramatic. I liked teamwork. He liked control. But for years, we balanced each other. We made it work. We raised good children. We built a life." She paused, looking briefly at Kody, not in anger, but in something far worse, disappointment. Then things changed, at first slowly, then all at once. She rested her hands on the wooden rail. "You asked earlier, Your Honor, what the cameras didn't show. Let me explain." She breathed in deeply, her calm tone filling the room. They didn't show the times I would call Kody for help, only to be told he was busy. They didn't show the birthdays he missed, not because of work, but because he simply didn't feel like driving across town. They didn't show how holidays became negotiation battles, where he chose which home he would attend, based on which wife he was happy with at that moment. Kody's jaw clenched. He hated it when she used the word chose. He always said he distributed time fairly. However, even he could not deny that some families got more than others. Janelle continued with calm honesty. When COVID happened, everything broke. Kody created rules, strict rules that none of us understood, none of us agreed with, none of us were even allowed to question. If we did, he called it disrespect. Kody looked up sharply. He remembered those rules. He had believed they were necessary. He didn't see the fear in his wife's eyes, only the disobedience. I lost my sons during that time, Janelle said softly, her voice trembling for the first time. Not literally, but emotionally. I watched Kody's relationship with our boys crumble because he refused to compromise, refused to show empathy, refused to listen. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. My boys begged him to talk. They begged for understanding. Instead, he accused them of being irresponsible, disrespectful, rebellious. Her voice broke somewhat, hurt to see my children treated like rivals. Kody bit the inside of his cheek. He remembered those fights, his sons shouting, him shouting back. Everyone hurt, everyone misunderstood. But hearing Janelle say it out loud, he realized how ugly it had been. "And, Your Honor," said Janelle, composing herself, "there is something else the cameras never showed." The courtroom leaned in. Kody stopped asking me how I was, stopped sitting with me, stopped checking if I needed anything. I could go days without hearing from him. And when I did hear from him, it was only to argue, to accuse, or to correct me. Her words were soft but sharp as a knife. He used to be my partner, but somewhere along the way, he became my critic. Kody flinched. Even he couldn't deny it. Somewhere amidst the chaos of managing 4 marriages, he'd stopped appreciating Janelle, stopped seeing her altogether. Then Janelle said the sentence that made the entire courtroom go silent. I realized that I was doing everything alone, but still being blamed for everything that went wrong. Kody shuts his eyes for a moment. That sentence hit him harder than he expected. Janelle took a deep breath and continued. "Your Honor, I didn't leave Kody because of another woman. I didn't leave because of jealousy or anger. I left because he stopped respecting me." A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. I stayed loyal to him. I stayed committed. I stayed hopeful. But hope can't fix a partnership when only one person is trying. She stepped down from the stand and walked back to her seat. No drama, no theatrics, just truth. And then he looked at the next person. "Mrs. Meri Brown, please come forward." A soft gasp went through the courtroom. Even Kody sat up straight. Meri had kept quiet, unreactive. But everyone knew, that if Meri chose to speak, the emotional weight would be explosive. She got up slowly, her hands shaking a little. Her face spoke volumes about years of sadness, loneliness, and unseen wounds. When she sat down at the stand, she didn't look at Kody, not even once. "I stayed the longest," she began, her voice both fragile and powerful. "I stayed even when I shouldn't have. I stayed because I believed in marriage, because I believed in Kody, because I believed that one day he would come back to me." Her hands trembled while speaking. But he never did. Kody's throat tightened. Meri continued. There were days he walked past me like I didn't exist. Days he refused to sit next to me. Days he told the other wives he had no relationship with me anymore. The cameras never showed how many nights I cried myself to sleep alone. The room was dead silent. I asked him, "Do you want this marriage?" He said he didn't know. Her voice cracked. I asked again months later. He said nothing. A tear slid down her cheek. That silence was my answer. Kody's eyes burned. He wanted to say something, anything. But what could he say? He had pushed Meri away for years, blaming her for a mistake she had apologized for 1,000 times. Meri continued. I stayed because I didn't know how to leave. I stayed because I loved a man who was no longer there. She paused. And because leaving meant to admit that I had lost him long before anyone else realized. It felt as though the courtroom was holding its collective breath. Then the judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Meri stepped down, her shoulders heavy. Now it was all eyes on one person. Every tension in the room pointed in one direction. It was Kody's turn. The judge looked at him firmly. Mr. Brown, please take the stand. Kody rose to his feet, his legs stiff, his throat dry, his head spinning with all he had. Just heard? He walked slowly toward the stand and felt thousands of invisible eyes on him. As he sat down, the judge invited him to begin. Kody exhaled shakily, and then, for the first time in years, his voice broke. I tried, he said, but the courtroom could tell. He wasn't as certain anymore if that was the truth, or just the excuse he had been using to survive. This moment, this collapse, was only the beginning of his breaking point. The courtroom had already absorbed the emotional weight of Christine, the logical precision of Janelle, and the heartbreaking vulnerability of Meri. Every testimony had peeled back another layer of the Brown family facade. And just when everyone thought the storm had reached its peak, the judge calmly lifted his eyes and said, Mrs. Robyn Brown, please step forward. A ripple slipped through the room. Surprise, curiosity, tension. Because if this family had a symbol of controversy, it was Robyn, the woman the world believed was the favorite, the woman the wives believed had been chosen over them, the woman whom viewers blamed for it all falling apart, but the woman who now looked like she was barely holding herself together. Robyn rose as if under a burden, her hands shaking while she gripped the edges of her shawl. Her lips quivered, and her eyes haunted, swollen from holding in tears she could no longer hide. She walked toward the witness stand, her footsteps hesitant, as though she did not want to take the path in front of her, but knew she must. She sat down, the chair creaking softly. Her breathing faltered. The courtroom fell silent. She gazed at the judge, then at the audience. Then, at last, at Kody. And for the first time, Kody wasn't looking at a wife. He was looking at a mirror that reflects his choices, his consequences, his reality. Robyn took the oath, but her voice was little more than a whisper. And the moment she started to talk, the room leaned in closer, not out of curiosity, but because her voice trembled with honesty. Your Honor, she said, fighting off tears. I know everyone thinks I won. They think I took Kody from the others. They think I'm the reason this family fell apart. Her voice shook harder, but she steadied herself. But the truth is, I lost too. I lost a lot. The courtroom froze. Even the judge paused his pen. Robyn continued, louder, now determined finally to utter the words she had swallowed for years. When I came into this family, I believed in sisterhood. I believed in unity. I believed in the dream they promised me. I thought I was coming into a home full of love and support. But instead, she swallowed tightly. I walked into a battlefield I didn't understand. Kody flinched. Robyn looked at the judge. They blame me for everything. The wives blame me for taking their husband. The world blames me for causing all the fights. But no one asked me what I wanted. No one asked me what I felt. She pressed her fingers against her chest. I wanted all of them. I wanted Christine. I wanted Janelle. I wanted Meri. I wanted the family, not just the man. Her voice cracked. But the more attention Kody gave me, the more they pulled away, not from him, but from me. They thought I was stealing him. But I wasn't. He was choosing me without me asking. A soft gasp traveled through the courtroom. Robyn looked down, ashamed. You want to know the truth? She whispered. I begged him many times to go spend time with them. Apologize, fix things, talk, try. She slowly shook her head. But he didn't. He said they didn't respect him. He said they did not love him right. They made all things difficult, he said. A tear rolled down her cheek. And every time he said that, every time he came home from their houses angry, I felt guilty, because I knew his anger started somewhere, but it always ended with me. Christine looked down. Janelle's jaw tightened. Meri wiped a tear. Robyn continued, her voice aching. The conversations the cameras never showed were the ones where I told him, Kody, please, go see them. They're hurting. She sniffed. But he would wave me off. He said he didn't want to be rejected again. She looked up to the judge, her eyes pleading. I didn't want him only for myself. I didn't want him to abandon the others, but he kept choosing me again and again and again, and every time he did, they hated me more. Now her hands trembled violently. I didn't win. I lost 3 sisters. I lost the idea of a united family. I lost relationships with children who once called me Mom. The courtroom watched silently, some visibly moved. Robyn took a shaky breath. And yes, I got more time. Yes, he was softer with me. Yes, he tried harder with me. But you know what that felt like? She looked up, her eyes red. It felt like holding something which was never supposed to be only mine. She pressed a shaking hand to her heart. It felt wrong. Kody looked dumbfounded. For years, he believed Robyn was his safe space. He had never thought she felt caged inside his specialness. Robyn continued. Do you know how many times I sat alone in my room, crying because I felt like the villain in a story I didn't write? People online called me a homewrecker, a manipulator, a snake. They said I destroyed a family, but I was only trying to survive inside it. She wiped her tears with the back of her sleeve. I did not want this ending. I did not want to be the only wife. I did not want a marriage built upon the ashes of the pain of others. Her voice broke. I loved this family. I loved these women. And even now, even after everything, I still do. A heavy silence fell. Even the judge looked affected. Robyn's hands clenched tightly together. I'm not here to blame Kody. I'm not here to blame them. I'm here to accept my part. To accept that, maybe, even without trying, I contributed to their hurt. Her eyes shone. But I want you to know, Your Honor, I never wanted any of this. I wanted a family that worked, a family that healed, a family that cared for one another. She lifted her gaze. Her voice grew steadier. But somewhere along the way, the love got lost, and we never found it again. There was a long pause. Then she said the words which broke the last remaining piece of Kody's ego. Kody didn't choose me because I was special. He chose me because I didn't challenge him. The entire courtroom gasped. Robyn looked down, ashamed of her own confession. I was gentle. I was quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't fight back. I tried to keep the peace. And maybe that's why he came to my house more. But it wasn't because he loved me more. It was because I didn't make him face himself. Kody's eyes widened, struck dumb. Robyn wiped one last tear away. And that is the real truth people never saw on TV. She slowly stood up and stepped down from the stand like a person walking away from years of bottled pain. The wives just stared at her, some in shock, others emotional, and for the first time in years, softened. And Kody sat frozen. Because for the first time ever, all 4 wives had spoken the truth. Not their truth. Not his truth. The truth. And suddenly, the image he had built for decades, the patriarch, the leader, the man in control, shattered. The judge looked at Kody more seriously than he ever had. "Mr. Brown," he said in a hushed tone, "have you anything to say?" Kody swallowed hard. His hands shook. His chest felt tight. Because now, after years of deflecting, blaming, avoiding, talking over them, there was nowhere left to hide. Session 5. The moment everything changed would be. The courtroom fell silent. Not the usual kind of silence. It lived and vibrated, was thick with all that had been said. Every truth, every wound, every broken piece of the Brown family laid bare for all to see. Kody Brown sat in the witness stand, hands shaking, eyes blurry with emotions he couldn't hide any longer. For once, he didn't try to fix his hair, didn't straighten his jacket, didn't put on the charm that made him a TV star. He looked defeated, smaller, as if the image he had fought so hard to maintain had finally buckled under the pressure of reality. The judge cleared his throat, a soft but terrifying sound. "Mr. Brown," he said, "you have heard the testimonies. Do you have anything to say before I proceed with my decision?" Kody swallowed, the kind of swallow that hurt. His voice cracked even before he spoke. He stopped, puffing shakily. "I didn't know how bad things were." A murmur swept the courtroom. Kody continued, his voice trembling. "I knew there were problems, yes. I knew the wives were unhappy. But I didn't realize I had become the source of so much pain." Christine's eyes dropped, blinking away tears. Janelle exhaled softly, almost sadly. Meri closed her eyes, as if she were hearing words she had waited a decade for. Robyn wiped her cheek, silent but hopeful. Kody pressed his palms against the wooden surface. "I thought I was doing the right things. I thought I was leading. But maybe—" He stopped, his voice shaking. "Maybe I was just controlling." The judge's eyebrows slightly arched in an impressed manner. Kody wiped away a tear from the corner of his eye. "I thought I was protecting the family. I thought I was juggling everything the best I could. But hearing them," his voice cracked. "Hearing how abandoned they felt, how invisible, how unloved. I didn't know it was this deep." He shook his head, the guilt finally crashing in. "I wasn't fair. I wasn't patient. I wasn't present." He swallowed again. "And I was angry. Too angry. I brought that anger into every home, and instead of fixing things, I made everything worse." Silence. Kody finally looked toward his wives, all 4. "I hurt each of you," he whispered. "I blamed you for problems I created. I ignored your feelings because I didn't want to face my own mistakes. And I'm sorry. I'm deeply, deeply sorry." Robyn cried softly. Christine stared at him, her face softening ever so slightly. Janelle nodded slowly, accepting the apology but not forgetting. Meri's lips began to shake, but she didn't give in. Kody bowed his head. I don't know if I can fix anything, but I do know this. I don't want to be the man you described today. I don't want my children to remember me that way. I want to be better. I need to be better. His voice fell into a whisper. For all of you. The tension that filled the courtroom dissipated somewhat, but not as much from the expression of the judge. Thank you, Mr. Brown, he said firmly. You may return to your seat. Kody nodded weakly and walked back, with each step feeling heavier than the last. He sat down, hands clasped tightly, while waiting for the verdict that was to define the next chapter in all of their lives. The judge rustled papers, inhaled deeply, and leaned forward. The verdict. I have listened to the testimony from each party, he began, his tone serious without being harsh. And I want to be clear, this is not simply a legal case. This is a human story, a family story, one filled with pain, misunderstanding, and emotional damage accumulated over many years. He paused, staring directly at Kody. Mr. Brown, leadership is not about power, it's about responsibility. It's about fairness. It's about showing the same love and respect to every member of your family. Kody nodded slowly, almost painfully. The judge continued. Your wives have spoken with candor. What their stories unearth is a pattern. Neglect, favoritism, unequal treatment, emotional distancing, and unresolved conflict. These issues did not crop up overnight. They grew over years. He glanced at Christine. These are women who supported you. At Janelle. Women who defended you. At Meri. Women who suffered in silence. At Robyn. And a woman who carried guilt she never asked for. Then his eyes refocused on Kody again. You did not fail because of plural marriage. You failed because you stopped trying. Kody closed his eyes as the words cut through him. The judge's voice gentled. But I also see a man who is finally facing the truth. A man who is capable of change, if he chooses to. He looked over at the wives again. I cannot repair your relationships. I cannot restore your marriages. But I can encourage healing. He took a deep breath. My ruling is simple. You are all free to take your own different or combined paths, but the emotional wounds laid out today need to be acknowledged, respected, and healed. That is my final decision. He struck the gavel. Court is adjourned. After the verdict. The room exhaled all at once. Christine wiped away tears, but this time they were tears of release. She turned to leave, head held high, finally unencumbered. Janelle stood up, her face calm, peaceful, in a way she hadn't been for years. With quiet dignity, she walked out, not looking back. Meri stopped, her hand resting for a moment on the back of her chair. She looked toward Kody. Not with anger, not with love, but with acceptance. Then she turned and walked away. Robyn stayed seated a moment longer. She then turned to Kody, her eyes brimming with sadness. And something more. Gratitude, perhaps. Or closure. She whispered just loud enough for him to hear. I hope you find the man you want to be. Then she stood and followed the others out. Kody alone. The courtroom slowly emptied, people whispering, reporters scribbling notes, observers shaking their heads or dabbing their eyes. But Kody didn't move. He sat alone, the silence echoing louder than any shouting match ever had. For years, he believed he was the center of this family. For years, he thought his wives revolved around him, For years, he believed he was the one holding everything together. But now, the truth stood before him, like a mirror which he could not look away from. He was never holding the family together. They were holding him up, and one by one, they had let go. The doors to the courtroom shut softly behind the last person. Kody swallowed, staring at the empty seats where his wives used to sit. Everything crashed through at the same time, the weight of everything, every mistake, every conversation ignored, every anger uncontrolled. He leaned forward and buried his face in his hands. For the first time in decades, Kody Brown fully reaped the consequences of his actions. No cameras, no producers, no wives, no excuses. Just a man, finally facing himself. And in that quiet, fractured space of the courtroom, he whispered, "I apologize. I'll be better." Whether he would succeed or fail was a story for another day.